Welcome back to the Rowan's podcast. I am the Rowan. This would be episode number 46, so grab yourself a cup of coffee, a comfy chair, and let's chat. Today we are welcoming back Mr. Richard Featherly. Hi, Rich. How are you doing today?
Doing well. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing okay. I'm glad that you're back. You have a really good, interesting topic for today, and I'm really excited about it.
Cool. Yeah, it's always been of interest for quite a while for me too.
Yeah. Well, I'm really interested in learning more about this. Can you tell our listeners what our subject is today?
We are talking about a subject that is not usually discussed in polite conversation, and it's not religion and it's not politics. It's shame.
Mm, yeah, that's something a lot of people like to avoid.
Right. Yeah. So, where would you like to start? Just definitions, maybe?
Yeah, let's start there.
Okay, I have definitions that are developed by a researcher who's kind of well known in the psychology field, a lady named Brene Brown. And her long form definition of shame is it's the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love, belonging, and connection. And then her short definition for shame is fear of disconnection. So one thing I quite often am aware about shame is it can be the definitions I just spoke of are more of like an attitude. We have an attitude that we're unworthy of love and belonging and connection, but it can also be felt as an emotion. And
Right.
it's as many emotions. There can be a range of intensities. If it's mild shame, we might use the word embarrassed. And actually, since shame is a word we like to avoid, I quite often will use the word embarrassed instead with my clients. Are you embarrassed about that? Because it has less of a sting than the word shame.
Yeah.
And on the other end of the spectrum, I think of at least one word I can think of for severe shame would be being mortified.
Yeah.
And that kind of ties into the effect, actually, the effect of shame, where it comes from. So,
Yeah.
those are the definitions. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think she defines it very well in her long version too. And to me, it seems like shame is like even to say like, are you ashamed of that or whatever? It just feels like it's condemning, kind of.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, we don't want to admit that we have shame because, yeah, it seems like there's something wrong with that. But one thing Brene Brown points out is that everybody has it. And if the less willing you are to talk about it, the more you probably have.
Yeah, I suppose that would be true.
Right? Just because of the effect that it has on our nervous system and that kind of thing. There was something else I had just thought of about it too, about being willing to talk about it. Well, it'll probably come back later.
I forget all the time and I lose track and I go off on some rambling ramble that people kind of wonder what I'm talking about, and then I skip back to it. So don't worry about that.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll come in later. So we go into the effect of it, when
Yeah.
and where it shows up, and
Oh
what it
yeah.
does to us. So in Brene Brown's studies, she puts out surveys and she tries to put a number to things. So she'll put out a survey and get people to fill out the survey and get an idea how how much shame a person is carrying, and she finds that people with more shame also tend to have more addictions, depression, aggression, bullying, violence, eating disorders, um, really all the disorders associated with the survival states we talked about in previous episodes. But something that Brene Brown doesn't talk about as much is the milder, I think the milder effect of shame is being a people pleaser, fawning, and of course we already mentioned this, poor communication. You know, if you have shame about something and you don't talk about it, then it stays buried, and it can create a lot of conflict when you have issues that are buried and not getting worked through.
And can that lead also to eventually, like if it, I don't know if this is the right word, but if it sits too long and it festers too long inside you that you don't talk about it, can that lead to like the worst effects of like addiction, depression, and aggression?
Yeah. She calls it a correlation because we can't say for sure that one can cause the other, but yeah, the more severe levels of shame are more likely to go along with addiction and violence. Oh, I know, being a perpetrator or a victim of violence. Just like the ACE study also found that people with higher ACE score also leads a person to be more likely to be a victim or a perpetrator of violence. That's because adverse childhood experiences tend to cause higher levels of shame.
Right. Yeah.
I've heard a theory. I listen to psychology podcasts quite often, many different ones, and there's kind of a general agreement that when you're a child, it's safer to think there's something wrong with me than there's something wrong with my parents. Because if you're thinking something is wrong with my parents, what do you do with that? You know, you can't fix your parents. But if you're thinking, oh, there's something wrong with me, then, oh, maybe I can work on it. Maybe I can be more perfect at something. Maybe I can put my nose to the grindstone at school or some other, way of coping with this thing that's happening in my family.
Yeah. I can see where that could also go along with like if you were involved in an abusive relationship too. A lot of times the victim feels like it's, well, obviously a lot of times the abuser is telling the victim it's their fault, but it gets ingrained, and then you also think that, it's what can I do differently? What am I, what can I change? I mean, that goes also with the people pleasing and the fawning. They try to please their abuser, and they try to change whatever because it's safer to work on yourself than to say, hey, abuser, you're being this way, you're hurting me, you need to change. Well, we know how that's going to go.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah.
So where would you like to go from here? We talked about how it shows up, definition.
Yeah, I'm minimizing the screen because I have that screenshot you sent me too, so I was going back and forth between that.
Okay.
How it shows up. I thought you just did that. Yeah, we just did that where it shows up.
Yeah, I did that. We could go into the why part.
Yeah, well, I was looking at the optional discussion, the first one that you have there. And I'm
not
sure.
Into that, eh?
Well, I'm not sure if we should or not. What do you think?
Yeah, okay. Or we could just kind of skirt around what we were thinking of maybe talking about has to do with parts of us that we have more shame about than others. So there's aspects of being a human that we're completely comfortable talking about, like eating food. We can go on, look at the TV and watch people cooking food or eating food, and that's fine. But there's other aspects of us that are less polite, less things that we're likely to talk about when with casual friends or especially strangers. So we could just leave it at that.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, we can just we'll skirt past that. Okay, so then we'll go into the why,
people
part.
probably people probably usually that's what we're talking about anyway.
Yeah.
Why? Yeah. So as I kind of mentioned in my outline, we are social creatures, which means we kind of depend on other people because if we were loners, we never would have survived. Back in the
Right.
cave dwelling days, as loners, something would have eaten us for sure. But sticking together, we have safety because we can fend for each other. And other social creatures like dogs, which evolved from wolves, are also social creatures. And anybody who owns a dog probably can recognize that they have shame at times. They know if they've done something wrong, and you can see it. You see their body language. Oh, yeah, what you did was wrong there.
Yeah, you just walk in the house and they put their head down, give you the sad puppy dog eyes, and kind of they did something while you were gone.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Then on the other hand, if you have cats, you might, unless there's a rare one that you might have, they're less social and they don't seem to be very capable of shame. They don't.
No,
They don't take.
they can sit on the edge of the counter, stare straight at you, and knock something over while they're looking at you. You have no shame at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and I know what I was going to talk about earlier that I had forgotten. The difference between shame and guilt.
Oh,
For us humans, um, it hasn't always been clear, but Brene Brown and other researchers have tried to clear that up so they can be studying the right thing. The difference between shame and guilt is guilt is, I never want to do that thing that I did again. That was not the right thing to do. I don't want to do it again. Whereas shame is because I did that, that means I'm a terrible person. I'm a screw up or I'm a loser, that kind of thing. So, and shame is worse for our health and worse for our behaviors. Whereas guilt, when it's at the level of I don't want to make that mistake again, that's usually helpful for people to have that when they can feel that wasn't the right thing to do. So that's usually helpful for people. So
right.
when you see it in a dog or a cat, it's kind of hard to tell the difference. Are they feeling guilt or are they feeling shame? Cats probably don't have either for the most part. But then, so shame, we're talking about shame as just a bad thing. Of course, everybody has some level of it. There may be some exceptions. If people don't seem to be capable of shame, you might call that psychopathy, being a psychopath, maybe a sociopath. People who can do terrible things and not seem to feel the least bit of they have a problem with it or feel bad about it at all. But for most of us, it's good that we have the capacity for shame, because then we don't kill people, we don't run stoplights, so we tend to drive carefully and not hog the road. So good to have the capacity for shame.
Yeah.
But best not to carry a whole ton of the attitude of shame.
Right.
So shall we get into how to counteract it and what Brene Brown has talked about as far as ways to kind of have antidotes for shame?
Well, I was looking at your other optional discussion and I'm trying to figure out.
Oh, yeah. when did shame develop? What are some stories that we're familiar with that might relate to shame? Such as in Genesis, when Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, how did God know that if they had eaten from that tree? They were embarrassed, which, they were shameful of their body. So it's a story that kind of, I think, gets to one of our causes for shame, and that is the belief that some things are better than others. And of course, other religions get into more of that being neutral as far as calling things a sin or things good or bad. So I don't know if
Do you think
that story contains some insight.
do you think
Go ahead.
do you think shame in a way is a kind of helps us point, well, maybe not, because that would be guilt that would do that. That would point us in like help us guide us into like a good direction instead of doing things
Right.
we
Yeah,
were
that's
ashamed of.
why guilt seems to be helpful for people.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
guilt would kind of
I,
help us stay away from the shame part because it would keep us from doing stuff that we shouldn't do so that we wouldn't have the shame.
yeah, like I'm coveting. I want what my neighbor has. I'm my neighbor has a beautiful brand new tractor, so I have to get a tractor. That we can feel a little guilty about that. Oh, I shouldn't. I shouldn't want a tractor just because my neighbor has a tractor.
Versus
Whereas,
having the
boy,
having the shame of taking out this big loan to get the tractor and then realizing you have all this money you have to pay back, and then you realize that you can't, and then you have shame because now you've gotten yourself into a spot, right? Kind
oh
of.
yeah, right, yeah, yeah, that would be one way that could play out, right? Um, oh man, what a loser I am that I, decided to buy this tractor that I hardly ever use or whatever, and I just spend my time working to pay for it or to try to, and I still can't. And so
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay. So we have how to counteract it. Now, is that, oh, okay. Yeah.
yeah. So one
Yep.
thing I'd like to point out before I even get into what Brene Brown says about how to counteract shame
Okay.
is that a few of your episodes on your podcast, I believe, are like one of the best ways to counteract shame, and that is realize who made us, and who made us doesn't make garbage. Doesn't make bad. You know, when on day 6 when we were made, God didn't say, "Oh well, I don't know about that." He said, "Very good." every other day was good, but when the day we were made, oh, very good. So and I've heard some of your podcast episodes where you're pointing that out. Whoever is listening, you are cared about, you are loved, you are valuable, you are worthy, because of who made you. God made you, so you can't be bad. God doesn't make bad. Our our thoughts make things bad.
Right.
Our decisions.
And then even if we do make bad decisions, it still doesn't really necessarily make us bad people. It's just we made bad decisions and we can change from them. We can go
Right.
on
Yeah.
from there. We can leave that stuff in the past and go on from there and do, you know.
Yeah. And I think when I think that was Jesus' mission. He there was this sect of religious group called the Pharisees, and he was really against those Pharisees. And the problem he had with them is because they would shame people, and they would make people feel hopeless because, oh, you didn't follow this law to the letter. And so I think that when we just had Easter last weekend, wasn't it?
Yeah.
and the expression is he died for our sins. What does that mean? It means that he came to show us that the most important thing is to love and forgive, and he died because of that message.
Yes.
and in other ways that I'm not enough of a
Yeah, and
student,
and
like
like
you studies religion to know.
yeah, and no, like no amount of shame can take that love from us. It can take that forgiveness from us, and
Right, yeah.
um,
No matter how bad we feel about ourselves, it's
yeah,
doesn't matter. We're still
we're still loved, and we
cared
still
about, loved.
and we all matter. Every one of us, we all matter.
Yeah, just like the little birds and the
Uh-huh.
lilies.
Yep.
So, getting on to what Brene Brown says about how to counteract shame. Um, one thing she talks about is vulnerability, which means letting, talking about things that are hard to talk about, um, like perceived faults, things that we're embarrassed about. Now she does. Um, I wasn't able to find it recently, but I've heard her in the past say that people have to earn your vulnerability. You don't just be vulnerable with everyone. You make sure that the person who you're being vulnerable with can be trusted with that information. Because
Right.
if you're vulnerable with the wrong person, they can use it against you. And that's a sign that it's a good idea not to be vulnerable with that person. Be careful about it anyway in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. I wholeheartedly agree with that. If you,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and I
Um,
think this
and
especially. Oh, sorry. Yeah,
Brene Brown points out that it's an act of courage to do that. Go ahead.
I think it's especially important though to remember too is when, man, I forget exactly how I was going to put this. When you're in a really, not sure how to put this, when you're in like a really bad spot, like a really, when you're really down, really down, and you're really vulnerable, it is like she said, it's very important to make sure that people you talk to are trusted, but it is extremely important that you are very careful with who you express that vulnerability with, because some people can take advantage of that and make things a whole lot worse. Um,
Right. Yeah.
and if you don't have anybody like within your circle or within your realm there, people that you feel like you can trust and you can talk to, there are people you can reach out to, and um, like as an example, you could go to a church, talk to someone there, a pastor or somebody, or you could find a therapist, or you could
Yeah.
there are numbers that you can call, and I know there's a lot of,
Right.
yeah, I'm not sure. I've never talked to there's like online things that you can go and talk to. Those I kind of think might be sketchy. I would kind of worry about that, but there might be some reputable ones that you could talk to. I know some people do that, but um, well, my whole point in saying it is you're not alone. Like if you feel like you're vulnerable and you can't go to anybody around you and you don't know where to turn to, you're not alone. There are people you can go to, and there are
Mm-hmm.
places. Don't be afraid to search for them. Don't be afraid to ask about them. Go find somebody and talk, because it's really important, because you're worth it, and you're worth healing.
Right. Yeah. 988 would be a number that you could call and be very reasonably sure that you're talking to somebody you can trust. Um, used to work at a, for a company called Dial Help, and they were based in Houghton. And when somebody would dial, um, before the number 988 came out, it was just the suicide prevention lifeline. And if you called suicide prevention lifeline from the 906 area code, you would get somebody at Dial Help in Houghton. But I'm not. Um, they don't. Dial Help doesn't do that anymore, so I'm not sure who you get when you call 988. But it's going to be somebody you can trust. Then
That's
if
good.
you're yeah. Then if you're a member of some kind of minority, there might be other numbers. Like if you're Native American, they have their own number that you can call. If you're a veteran, you can call 988, and once you get in there, they say if you're a veteran, press 1, and then you get a different person who's more specialized in talking to veterans. So there's things like that. It's a good find.
Thank you for that information,
So,
because I wasn't sure. I knew
yeah,
there was a number, and it was like a 3-number number. I just didn't know what it was. So thank you.
right, yeah, I need. The other anecdote Brene Brown talks about is wholehearted living, and I sent you a graphic that is
Yeah.
pointing to that.
Yep,
Look
I got
through
it.
that. So there's 2 lists. One is under the category of things to let go of. So things to let go of are what people think, perfectionism, numbing and powerlessness. Numbing, of course, comes from being kind of frozen, so you try to avoid becoming frozen. There's tricks to that, but anyway, the next one is believing in scarcity and fear of the dark. That's a little it's a little puzzling to me. Fear of the dark. That
Well,
must be metaphorical, anyway.
yeah, it could be like the fear of the unknown, because
Yeah, yeah.
that's why I'm afraid of
Mhm.
the dark, because I'm afraid of what's in it, because I don't know what's there. So
Right.
maybe
Yeah,
that's what
that's
it
true.
is.
Yeah, it's a metaphorical statement. Anyway, letting go of the need for certainty, um, letting go of comparison, comparing yourself with other people. Good idea. Letting go of exhaustion as a status symbol and productivity as self-worth. Of course, yeah, productivity is just one coping mechanism that people sometimes use to try to prop up their poor sense of self-worth. Productivity, education, being successful, all those kinds of things that we use as an antidote to having just an intrinsic sense of self-worth, because if we made us anyway, letting go of anxiety as a lifestyle, letting go of self-doubt and I'm supposed to. I know something I thought of this morning, and this reminded me of that. The word should is quite often a shame-based word. I've heard of a famous dead psychologist, Carl Rogers, said that should is his only swear word. And I'm kind of the same way. You can. I have clients that swear a lot, and I'm fine with it. But if they use the word should, that's a dirty word. And the last on this list of letting go of is being cool and always in control.
I had a question about the one you had a few ones back here. It's with the productivity and self-worth, but it was the one like just above it, exhaustion as a status symbol. Can you explain that one?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there are people who get together with their friends and say, "Oh, I'm doing so much, I'm so exhausted," and that means I'm worthy. I'm worthy because I'm working so hard and I'm exhausted. That's how I prove that I'm worthy. That
Okay.
I'm working myself to the bone, burning the candle at both ends. That's what makes me good.
Okay.
So
I get
yeah,
that. I
that's.
kind of thought that's what you meant,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
I know of an example of that, but but
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I get that. Cool.
Yeah. The one that I'm Another one that I'm questionable about is anxiety as a lifestyle. I mean, if a person is anxious, that's not something to feel shameful about. You have anxiety, um, although making it a lifestyle, I'm not sure how that looks, unless it's similar to the exhaustion as a status symbol. Oh, I'm so anxious, and I like to talk about it. That makes me cool because I have so much anxiety. I don't know. There may be some subcultures where they do that kind of thing.
Maybe. Yeah.
Anyway, shall we get on to the other category, the other side of the list?
Yeah.
So, guideposts for wholehearted living, cultivating authenticity, which means speaking your truth, even if it's scary sometimes, with the right people. Self-compassion, a resilient spirit. Um, that's a little I wonder what that means. Anyway, gratitude and joy. Of course, gratitude is a great idea because it gets our mind out of the habit of focusing on negative stuff, as it often does. If we make it a point to have gratitude on occasion, like maybe at least once a day, it tends to cultivate joy. That's another thing that Brene Brown. I watched a video of Brene Brown talking to Oprah, and she was talking about gratitude, and she said in her studies, all the surveys she does, people who have joy in their life have a gratitude practice. So she found a very strong correlation between people feeling a sense of joy and having gratitude practice, making it a point to be grateful about things.
Right.
So next on our list is, for cultivating things, is cultivating your intuition and trusting your faith. So if you get a sense that a person is a good person to interact with, or a person is not a good person to interact with, try to follow those leadings. Next on the list is creativity, which creativity is good for us. It's kind of an aspect of a part of us that's expresses who you really are. When you're creative, you're expressing yourself, which is kind of the opposite of being shameful. When you're shameful, you tend not to express yourself for fear of what people might say about it. Then the rest is rest and play. So resting when you need to rest, which if you're carrying a lot of shame, you might think you need to always be busy and don't deserve to rest. Or play. And play is things that give you pleasure that don't have really any like monetary or material value. Just doing it for fun.
Can I jump in here for 1
Yeah,
second? Okay, because I'm
yeah.
looking at the graphic here, and I'm seeing how they have like the two columns, and they're right next to each other. And in a way, well, they kind of like letting go of what people think, and you cultivate authenticity. Okay, so I'm going down here to where we're just at, the rest and play one, and this is the one that's opposite exhaustion as a status symbol, and productivity is self-worth, and then let go of that, but then cultivate rest and play. And I was thinking about that, and maybe like we were saying, as exhaustion is like, oh, I'm working myself so hard, I'm so tired, and you're kind of bragging about, but it could also be that maybe we're feeling that we have to work that hard and exhaust ourselves that hard in order to be worth whatever, and not having the shame of like I didn't do enough. And then
Right.
the
Yeah.
productivity is, as self-worth is like, you just work yourself too much, and then but you need you need to actually rest and not exhaust yourself so much, and then instead of just work, you should be doing some playing. Because
Right.
both
Right.
those
Yeah.
things can help grow you as a person, to be able to rest and play at something that you feel
Right.
you know
Yeah. They're good for you, and you deserve it.
right. Sorry, I just,
Um,
those thoughts came in my head as you
no,
were.
that's good. That's perfect. Great. Yeah. And yet some of these things on the list are clearly opposites of each other, and some are less clearly opposite. So opposite of anxiety is a lifestyle, under the letting go of column, is cultivating calm and stillness. And I imagine that the way you cultivate calm and stillness is to rest and play, like the suggestion above it, and also things like meditation or praying or whatever helps you gain some stillness. And then the last on our list for cultivating is meaningful work. And that's opposite letting go of self-doubt and supposed to, I should do this. Instead of doing things because you think you should, doing things because, oh, this is the way I want to contribute to the world. I'm doing it because it's really helpful. Oh, one more thing on our list. yeah, so meaningful work.
Yep.
And I had to scroll a little bit and realize, oh, there's one more thing on our list.
Yep.
So opposite cool and always in control is to cultivate laughter, song, and dance.
Yep.
So, and I would add doing your martial art practice. You probably mentioned that you do that on your podcast before.
Yeah. I used
Yeah.
to go down to the beach just like early morning, about sunrise, or a little bit thereafter, and I would take my bow staff with me and work out with my bow staff. I haven't done that in a couple of years since I moved back to the farm because I'm not as close to
Mm,
the the lake as I was. It's like a 40-mile drive for me now. Well, 35
right.
versus the 5. So, but
Yeah.
I'm hoping to do that this summer anyways, just take at least once a week. I'm if the gas prices ever go down a little bit, but that's my goal is this week once it starts getting warmer, or this year once it starts getting warmer, maybe once a week
Yeah.
make that trek down
Yeah,
there.
if you could find some other good place to do it, I don't know if it would have to be at a beach or
Well, for
maybe there's
me, I mean,
maybe a state park.
I have the farm, but
Yeah.
um it's not the same for me being on the beach, hearing the waves,
Okay.
feeling the sand, the hot sand under
Yeah.
my feet and things like that, the wind, and which,
Yeah.
it's
So if you
different.
have that's, yeah. So the setting matters for you when you're
Yeah,
doing that.
because
So
it's
yeah.
like it's a full sensory experience for me. You know, the rhythm of the
Hmm.
movements, the wind, the smell, the heat of the heat, the water, the sound, it's the full
Yeah. Yeah.
everything. Here, sound like a big
So yeah,
guru or
good,
something, but
good point. Yeah. So I just thought I'd throw that in with the suggestion to cultivate
yeah,
laughter, song, and dance. I figure it was kind of like dance
it
a little
is.
bit.
It is. And that's another thing that I want to start doing is I used to do that all the time, like all the time growing up and into my young adult years. I always had music going and was always dancing
Mm,
somehow. And then when the kids were little, I used to just dance with them. We just dance around the house.
mm,
And
neat.
now that I'm older, yeah, I'm almost 60 years old, but I'm feeling that need with so much anxiety. And I do have anxiety in my life, but so much of the stuff that's going on in my life, I just feel like maybe if I had more dancing back in my life, I could release some of that energy. And I mean, I don't have to go crazy
Yeah.
because, I am old and ancient, but even just a little bit,
Mhm.
would be good, would be helpful just to release some of that. And then that would give me some laughter too. I would smile. So I've been thinking about that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Kayla
So what do
probably
you
think
think
I'm
of this
crazy.
list?
Huh?
What do you think of this list?
Well, I think this is a really good list. I don't know if I can I don't know if I can post this or not. I'm gonna see if I can post this in the for the podcast, like in the comments or
Okay.
whatever,
Yeah.
or the
Hmm.
info for the podcast. I'm gonna see if I can post
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. I had to email it to you because I was having trouble texting it to you.
Yeah, well, I found out that if I copied it, because I was trying to see, the problem was I was trying to click on it instead of copy and pasting
Mm.
it into the browser, and then when I copied and pasted into the browser, then it took me to this. Actually, it took me to this and another one that has the same stuff, but it just had a different image, which was harder for me to read. But this
Oh,
was a
huh.
lot better. This was a lot better to read. Well, it sent me to both of these actually, but the first one was like
Yeah.
a bunch of leaves, and it was written on the leaves, and it was really hard to see. This one's a lot better, so I'll probably post
Yeah.
this
Cool.
if I can, if I'm allowed to. We'll see. I don't know what the copyright things are or whatever, so.
So I just noticed we've been talking for at least 45 minutes. So I don't
Yeah.
know how long you want to make your episode.
I was, when I first started these, I was trying to make them for a half an hour or less, but then I kept losing track of the
Yeah.
time, and I've had ones that are way over an hour. I had one
Yeah.
almost an hour and a half,
So
and it's like, oh man, that's bad. But yeah, we should
yeah,
probably.
Yeah, this was a good discussion. I think gave people a good idea why shame is an issue that we should put a little thought into,
Yeah,
contemplation.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm at a loss for words just because I have a lot of stuff going through my head, a lot of thoughts and ideas about this whole subject going through my head. It's hard for me to just kind of like. So there's a lot that I have to digest here too. So
Yeah, okay.
I hope
Well,
our
we can always come back and discuss it again.
yeah, yeah.
So take some notes of your thoughts, and then we could come back and talk about it and any of the other issues we brought up in previous episodes.
Yeah, we can do that. And if any of our listeners out there have any questions or any comments they want to add to this, pop them down in the comments, and I promise I will read them. And if you give us questions, I will have Rich here answer them for you. We'll have another episode with him on there, and he can answer um, if he wants to. I'm pretty sure he does.
Yeah,
But yep, as long as everything, like I said, I will read all your comments and everything, and I'll answer back so long as everything is polite. But yeah. So no, I really appreciate you coming back on, and I really appreciate you picking this topic because I really think it's important. Um, and I really think this is a very good episode. Thank you.
yeah, my pleasure.
And
It was fun talking with you. And
yeah, anytime you want to
do it
come
again.
back, if you want to do one just on your own, completely on your own, I can record it and put it up for you.
Oh,
Anytime
mhm.
you want to come back or chat, let me know.
Oh, okay.
So we'll set it all up and everything. And I'm really thankful. I'm really glad that you came on today. Thank you.
My pleasure.
All right, listeners. Well, I'm gonna thank everyone for stopping by for a chat, and I hope you all have a good day. And remember, you all do matter. And like I said before, it's not something that I just say, it's something I truly do believe. And thank you so much for listening. More later. Bye.
Goodbye.